Growing up, I was always taught to be kind, to be polite, to smile, to say yes even when I wanted to say no, to not upset anyone, to always be nice. And I don't think that's necessarily wrong. In fact, being kind is one of the most beautiful qualities any human being can have. But I also realized as I walked through the many phases of life, school, career, fame, relationships, that somewhere along the way, we start confusing kindness with people pleasing. We start equating being liked with being valuable. We begin to think that if we're not friendly enough, if we don't shrink ourselves for others, if we speak up or set boundaries, we are being rude, arrogant, difficult. And I want to say this clearly today. Stop being too friendly, because sometimes that friendliness is not generosity. It's fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being misunderstood. We think that if we keep giving parts of ourselves away, we'll finally be accepted. But let me ask you, at what cost? I've spent a good part of my career in the public eye, and people will often describe me as graceful, poised, sweet. But what they don't always see is the steel beneath that calm surface, the strength it takes to draw a line, to say no, to protect your peace. Because trust me, if you don't draw your own boundaries, people will draw them for you, and they'll never be in your favor. There's a quiet pressure in society, especially on women, but really on anyone who wants to be liked, to constantly smile, agree, accommodate. We are taught to be diplomatic even when it eats us alive. But you know what I've learned? Being overly friendly doesn't win you real love or respect. It wins you convenience. It wins you temporary approval. And in the process, you lose yourself. There have been moments in my own life where I was too accommodating, where I bit my tongue to avoid conflict, where I said yes when my entire being screamed no. I was so afraid of disappointing people that I ended up disappointing myself. I realized I was living for the comfort of others while abandoning my own needs, my own values. And let me tell you, it's a very lonely place to be. Because what's worse than being disliked is being liked for someone. And so I began to change. Not overnight, not dramatically, but slowly, deliberately. I started saying no. Not rudely, but firmly. I stopped apologizing for having an opinion. I stopped feeling guilty for choosing my peace over someone else's comfort. I stopped offering warmth to people who only ever offered me coldness. And something amazing happened. The noise in my life started to fade. The chaos of pleasing everyone turned into the calm of pleasing myself. The relationships that were based on convenience fell away, and the ones based on mutual respect deepened. I was no longer everyone's favorite, but I was my own. And that mattered more. You don't owe anyone your constant friendliness. You don't owe anyone access to your energy just because they demand it with a smile. You don't have to be available to everyone all the time. You are not a doormat. You are not a lifeline for people who only reach out when it suits them. You are allowed to choose yourself. This isn't about being unkind. This isn't about being closed off or bitter. No, it's about being intentional. It's about making sure that your friendliness is a choice, not a default. That it's rooted in strength, not insecurity. That when you give, you're giving from a place of abundance, not desperation. People will call you names when you change. They'll say you've become cold, distant, arrogant. Let them. Don't let those words pull you back into the cage you've just escaped. Let them sit with their version of you while you live in your truth. Because here's the thing. Some people only liked you when you were smaller, quieter, easier to manage. The moment you start growing, standing taller, speaking louder, they become uncomfortable. That's not your problem. That's their mirror. Let's normalize strength. Let's normalize silence that speaks louder than noise. Let's normalize a calm no instead of a pressured yes. Let's normalize protecting our energy without guilt. Because at the end of the day, your peace is not up for negotiation. Your soul is not a bargaining chip in someone else's game. You don't have to prove your worth by overextending your kindness. You are enough just as you are. And let me say this, especially to those of you who've been taught to be small, you're allowed to take up space. You're allowed to be powerful. You're allowed to say, this doesn't work for me, and walk away. You're allowed to be respected, not just liked. So stop being too friendly when it costs you your authenticity. Stop saying yes when your heart says no. Stop showing up for people who wouldn't do the same for you. You are not rude for choosing yourself. You are not selfish for protecting your spirit. You are not cold for setting boundaries. You are powerful. And power doesn't always come wrapped in a smile. Don't let the world trick you into shrinking. Don't let politeness be the mask that hides your pain. Don't let your desire to be liked rob you of the life you deserve. You were not born to be everyone's favorite. You were born to be free. So be free, be real, be kind, but never at the cost of yourself. Thank you.